Today is June the 10th. Why was Jesus crucified? Let's find out together as we read sections in the Passion narrative. Today, reading through the Bible in a year, I'd like you to read Matthew chapter 26. You could start in verse 57 and read through chapter 27, verse 23. This is the story of the trial of Jesus. You'll find parallels to that in Mark chapter 14, verse 53 to chapter 15, verse 14. In Luke chapter 22, verse 54 to chapter 23, verse 22. And in John chapter 18, verse 13 to chapter 19, verse 15. Yesterday we saw Jesus arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. They take Jesus to the high priest's house. The purpose for that is that Jesus would be tried by the Sanhedrin. We see this, we're going to follow for a while in the book of Matthew. In the book of Matthew, chapter 26, verse 59, inside the high priest's house, the leading priests and the entire high council were trying to find witnesses who would lie about Jesus so they could put him to death. They reached a verdict. They finally simply asked Jesus, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of God?" In verse 64, Jesus says, "You've said it." And in the future, you'll see the Son of Man seated in the place of power at God's right hand. Now the high priest shouts, and in verse 66, he says, "Blasphemy. Why do we need other witnesses? You've all heard his blasphemy." "What's your verdict?" "Guilty," they shouted. "He deserves to die." Why was Jesus crucified? According to the Sanhedrin, he was crucified because he committed blasphemy. He said he would be seated at God's right hand. But the Sanhedrin knew that they couldn't carry out a capital punishment order, and so they sent him to Pilate to be tried. Matthew chapter 27, starting in verse 11, Jesus appears before Pilate. When he's before Pilate, the Sanhedrin presents a different accusation. Now Jesus was standing before Pilate, the Roman governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus said, "You've said it." Same way he answered the Sanhedrin. But he answered a different charge. The Sanhedrin said, "Are you the Son of God?" He said, "Yes." Presenting him to Pilate, they didn't accuse Jesus of saying that he was the Son of God. Instead, they said, he makes himself out to be the King of the Jews. Pilate asks him that, and Jesus says, "Yes, I am." Now, in the book of Luke, in one of those parallel passages that you read, Luke includes that at this point, Pilate asks Jesus where he's from. Jesus stops answering, but others answer for Jesus. And they say, "He's from Galilee." "Oh," Pilate says, "that's different. Galilee is under Herod." So he sent Jesus to Herod, probably Herod Antipas, to be tried by Herod. Chapter 23, verse 11, Herod asks Jesus about himself, and he doesn't give Herod any answer at all. So they mock him. They put a royal robe on him and sent him back to Pilate. Why would they do that? Because Pilate sent him, saying he pretends to be the king of the Jews. Herod Antipas was recognized by the Roman Senate to be the king of the Jews. Well, Herod sends him back to Pilate. Excuse me. Herod sends Jesus back to Pilate. Now Pilate asks Jesus, what do you want me to do? And Jesus refuses to answer. So Jesus tells the crowd, I find no fault in him. They say, kill him. Pilate says it's tradition at Passover to release one prisoner to you. I'll give you the choice, Jesus or Barabbas. Barabbas was a murderer. They said, give us Barabbas. What do you want me to do with Jesus then? Crucify him. Just 5 days before, the crowd was welcoming Jesus into Jerusalem, shouting, Hosanna. Today the crowd is shouting, crucify him. Pilate takes Jesus and he flogs him almost to death. Then he presents him to the crowd and says, isn't this enough? Behold the man. The crowd says, no, crucify him. Now again, it's the book of John that goes just a little bit deeper here. John chapter 19. He presents Jesus to the crowd. So far we've seen two accusations. That Jesus said he was the Son of God. The Sanhedrin found him guilty of death. Before Pilate, Jesus pretends to be the king of the Jews. Pilate found him innocent of that charge. But in the book of John, chapter 19, verse 12, we see what's really at stake here. The crowd shouts to Pilate. When Pilate tried to release him, the Jewish leaders shouted, if you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who declares himself a king is a rebel against Caesar. This is a veiled threat on the part of the Jewish leaders to go over Pilate's head, to go straight to Caesar, saying this man has set him up in your place. In verse 15, after Pilate had Jesus flogged, he presents him to the crowd. He says, look, here's your king. Verse 15, the crowd shouts, away with him. Away with him. Crucify him. What? Crucify your king? Pilate asked. The leading priests shout back, we have no king but Caesar. And in verse 16, Pilate turned Jesus over to them to be crucified. Why was Jesus crucified? According to the Sanhedrin, he was crucified for blasphemy. According to Pilate, he was crucified for treason. According to John, chapter 11, back when the Jewish leaders first decided to kill Jesus, Caiaphas said, it's better that one man die for the people than for the whole nation to be destroyed. The author of the Gospel of John can't help himself. John chapter 11, verse 51. He says he didn't say this on his own. As high priest at that time, he was led to prophesy that Jesus would die for the entire nation. And not only for that nation, but to bring together and unite all the children of God scattered around the entire world. Why was Jesus crucified? According to the Sanhedrin, he was crucified for blasphemy. According to Pilate, he was crucified for treason. According to John, he was crucified for me. He was crucified for you. He was crucified to bring us together, to forgive us of our sin, of our shame, of our weakness, and unite us and bring us back to God. Like, follow, and subscribe to this devotional on whatever platform you use to listen to it. Email your questions to us at questions@becomehope.com. Enjoy this Sunday in the church of your choice.